Going into its 11th season, the television series MASH had gone on almost 4 times longer than the historical event it was depicting, the Korean War. This left series star Alan Alda chomping at the bit to finally leave the show, and to that end, the cast held a vote as to whether or not to continue the series. The final tally was 4-3 to end the series.
The rest, as they say, is history, with the final season of MASH leading into the finale movie Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, which became the most-watched primetime broadcast in TV history, a record that would stand almost 26 years before being beaten by Super Bowl 44 between the New Orleans Saints and Indianapolis Colts.
However, that would not actually be the end of the MASH story, as CBS, the broadcast network that aired the show, was beginning to look into the possibility of a MASH spin-off series that would follow the characters after the events of the Korean... that's not technically a spin-off of MASH the TV show, or at least that's what the producers claim. Look, just ignore that for now. Let's get back to the matter at hand.
This new spin-off would follow the continuing adventures of Harry Morgan's Sherman Potter, Jamie Farr's Maxwell Q. Klinger, and William Christopher's father John Francis Patrick Mulcahy as they began working for a VA hospital shortly after returning home from Korea.
By the way, guess who were the 3 actors who voted against ending the original show? Anyway, who exactly are these 3 characters and why are they so important?
Colonel Sherman Tecumseh Potter was the commanding officer of the 477th MASH unit in Korea, replacing the former CO Henry Blake. Unlike most other doctors at the 477th, a doctor who was drafted into service, Potter was a career Army doctor who actually served as a soldier in World Wars I and II, with the Army paying for his medical school in between conflicts. However, Potter was empathetic to his underlings and definitely loosened many of the military protocols, pointing out that his doctors were doctors first, not soldiers. This led him to become sort of a father figure to many in the camp.
Coincidentally, Potter's actor Harry Morgan had appeared in an earlier episode of MASH as a completely different character who was a general. This led Morgan to jokingly point out that he was the only person on the show to get demoted from general to colonel throughout the run of the series.
Up next is Father John Francis Patrick Mulcahy, the camp chaplain. Though a priest, Mulcahy had to cater to many different faiths to provide spiritual guidance to the people at the 477th, and even some of the surrounding Korean villages. Mulcahy was also a master negotiator who would often venture into the black market to get materials and supplies for the 477th, and also a nearby Korean orphanage.
In the final episode of MASH, aka Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, Father Mulcahy was in an area that experienced heavy shelling, and this resulted in an apparently permanent form of tinnitus/hearing loss. We'll get a bit more into that later.
Finally, we have Maxwell Q. Klinger, a Lebanese enlistee who realized that he wasn't cut out for army life, and to that end, Klinger began to dress and act like a woman.
Now, I don't want this to come across like it's some sort of progressive depiction of a lifestyle on 70s television. It's kind of far from it, as Klinger was a heterosexual man. He was not gay, he was not a transvestite, he was not questioning his gender identity. He was a straight man who wanted people to believe that he thought he was a woman, and thus he would get a Section 8 discharge, which would declare him mentally unfit for military service. In fact, in a Season 2 episode, Klinger actually was offered a discharge that would have been branded as a homosexual for the rest of his life, and he turned it down.
Not that any of this necessarily made Klinger a bad guy, far from it, as he was kind, caring, and understanding, especially when it came to women's needs. Also, much like Mulcahy, he was something of a master negotiator and huckster, able to work con games on certain individuals when need be. Eventually, Klinger would give up trying to get the Section 8 discharge and start dressing up like a man again. He would even become the new company clerk and get promoted to sergeant in the process.
During the final season of MASH, Klinger met a woman named Sun-Lee Han, a Korean refugee, and the two slowly fell in love as they attempted to locate the missing members of her family. They would eventually get married during Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, and in the ultimate form of irony, Klinger, the man who attempted so many escapes from Korea, including attempting to mail himself back to the United States in a crate, eating an entire jeep piece by piece, forging various letters claiming members of his family to be either deceased and or pregnant, and even constructing a homemade hang glider and attempting to fly back to America wearing a blue bathrobe and fuzzy pink bunny slippers, would actually wind up staying in Korea. Now, obviously, given the character's involvement in this show, that didn't seem to last too long. So how did this get to be? Let's take a look at the pilot to AfterMASH.
I bet you did something today you feel pretty good about. Bet you did. So go get your Mars bar. Come on, you deserve the best. Can't you just taste that rich milk chocolate, creamy caramel, and snuggle deep inside soft nougat? Big, fresh, crunchy nuts after nuts after nuts. This is what you deserve. You deserve every big crunchy nut in a Mars bar. You did do something good today, didn't you?
Sherman Potter returns home to Hannibal, Missouri, and his wife Mildred. The two are eager to finally leave the Army life behind and enter retirement. Unfortunately, after a few weeks, the glow is worn off and Sherman is bored. He's gotten word that Klinger has gotten back to the U.S., but things aren't going so well for him either. At Mildred's behest, Sherman re-enters the medical practice and pays a visit to General Pershing VA Hospital in nearby Riverbend, Missouri, otherwise known as, General. There, he meets up with an old charge named Bob Scannell, who's been at the hospital since World War I due to an overexposure of mustard gas. The hospital administrator, named D'Angelo, gives Potter a tour of the facilities, where he learns that for many veterans, the true path is just beginning. D'Angelo feels that Sherman is best served as being General's chief of staff. He's unsure because it would mean moving to Riverbend, but Mildred points out the couple's nest is empty and maybe it's time for a change. The first thing that enters Sherman's mind is to bring Klinger in for some help, and he sends him a letter, which is received in the county jail.
I should point out that even though Colonel Potter is still technically retired, everyone still refers to him by his military rank. As for Klinger, well, he and Soon Lee did manage to locate her missing family members, and the couple eventually got the blessing to return to the United States.
Unfortunately, upon returning to Klinger's hometown of Toledo, things soon went south. Max was unable to find anywhere close to adequate work, nor could the couple find housing because of their mixed-race marriage. This left Max no other choice but to take a job running the phone for an illegal bookmaking scheme, resulting in his arrest. Klinger throws himself on the mercy of the court and explains that Potter has offered him a job as an administrative assistant at General, even showing the letter from him. The judge is lenient and allows the Klingers to move to Missouri. But Klinger will still have to take the civil service exam. Unfortunately, back at General, a PTSD-stricken patient named Danny escapes, and the higher-ups don't want to involve the authorities lest they lose congressional funding. Potter calls the cops anyway, and the young man has gone to the Potter's new home and taken Mildred hostage. Potter confronted the suicidal Danny and talked him down long enough for the police to take him into custody.
The Klingers soon make it to Riverbend and begin to settle in with the Potters. However, the joyous reunion is short-lived as they receive a phone call from Sister Angelica, Father Mulcahy's sister, who is coincidentally also a nun.
Mulcahy has taken the fact that his loss of hearing has cost him his opportunity at his own parish, and he's been driven to drink. He's even been arrested for it. Potter arranges for Mulcahy to be flown to St. Louis for an experimental grafting surgery to his eardrum that will hopefully restore his hearing. However, it'll still take a week for there to be any evidence that the procedure worked. Meanwhile, Klinger has run afoul of the administrative secretary, Alma Cox, a by-the-books whipcracker who takes every opportunity to verbally abuse him. There's also a young go-getting surgeon named Dr. Pfeiffer who only seems to be in this for the glory and not for actually helping patients. Thankfully, Klinger is able to scrounge up an extra room for a female patient in need of one.
You can really see how they're trying to turn this show into another MASH. I mean, the hospital administrator is not too dissimilar from the original CEO of the 477th. That's Colonel Henry Blake. Or Alma Cox is clearly kind of a mashup between Frank Burns and Hot Lips Houlihan, and Dr. Pfeiffer with his sort of blowhardedness, with his naivete, is kind of a combination of Major Winchester and another character we'll be talking about next time.
Mulcahy comes to Riverbend, and the three former 477th alumni begin to bond as Mulcahy hopes to return to his parish in Philadelphia, hoping that only one of his ears will really need a procedure, as the other one still kind of works pretty well. In the meantime, Mulcahy stays at General, where he tries to provide guidance to some of the patients. Later, Colonel Potter helps coach Dr. Pfeiffer, who is flustered as the woman who Klinger managed to scrounge up a storeroom to use as a hospital room has tested positive for VD, and it's something the doctor is not too comfortable with expressing. Also, Dr. Cox finds out that Klinger didn't go through the proper procedures in clearing the storeroom to be used as a hospital room. Any demerit could jeopardize Klinger's chances on the social service exam. However, a still displeased Potter decides to remove the demerit, citing the fact that Cox is not held in the highest regard even amongst the hospital higher-ups. Meanwhile, Mulcahy helps a recent amputee who is African-American regain the ability to walk and use his artificial leg by painting the device to match his skin color. Everyone is pleased, and Mulcahy is offered a position at General to work with the Catholic patients. Soon the week is up and Mulcahy has regained his hearing.
Hey, my desk!
Making room for the new computer.
We just got new computers.
I'm talking about a really big computer.
Is this big enough to run mainframe programs?
Piece of cake.
Is it big enough for hundreds of workstations?
Of course.
Wow, for thousands of customer accounts?
No sweat, kid.
Wow, that does sound big. You better not spill your coffee on it.
This is it? Where's the rest of it?
The IBM mid-range. Big computers in small packages.
Come in.
And tied into our IBM mid-range computer, you can check calendars, get phone lists, even send instant memos.
Okay, let's see if anyone's awake out there. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck?
If a woodchuck could chuck wood.
I'll need specifics. What size woodchuck? What type wood? I got some ideas on this woodchuck thing. Let's do lunch.
Why wasn't I asked to head up Project Woodchuck?
It works.
IBM office systems, electronic mail, and a whole lot more.
So that concludes our first look at the pilot to AfterMASH. The show would get picked up for a full first season and garner top 10 ratings, though it didn't exactly get much in the way of critical acclaim. Still, CBS believed enough in the show to pick it up for a second season, and they even put it up against another critically derided ratings juggernaut. Yeah, AfterMASH got completely trounced in the ratings and was cancelled 8 episodes into its second season. So, what exactly are my thoughts on this pilot episode? Well, it's kind of unique, because I'd always heard a lot of negative things about AfterMASH, how it was just this pale imitation of the original, and it really wasn't very good, and, you know, it's kind of hard to just base entirely off that on the pilot, but I didn't really seem to get that. It seemed to be a pretty decent story overall. I think the characters still work. I mean, the actors are talented enough to still work really well together, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I do like some of the issues they address, like the PTSD and the racism the Klingers face. That's stuff that does carry out through the rest of the first season. That being said, I do see again how the show is desperately trying to be MASH. I mean, it's trying a little too hard to be MASH in this case. I mean, you look at another kind of sequel spin-off series like Frasier, which spun off of Cheers, obviously, and, you know, Frasier did hang out at the coffee shop Cafe Nervosa, but, you know, there wasn't a Cafe Nervosa equivalent to Carla or Norm or Cliff Clavin there. It was just, you know, Frasier and Niles at the coffee shop. I mean, they did its own thing. This doesn't do its own thing. It's just trying to recreate MASH, and you really didn't need to do that. I think you could have just had them work at the hospital with their own different characters and stuff. I mean, did we need someone plotting against Klinger to keep him from getting a job? Really? And not to mention, General, it's a really hackneyed joke. I mean, that was dated even in 1983. That's how bad that was. So, again, not very good. But still, I would say it's not bad, and I do kind of wish this show was on Hulu or something, but it isn't. It never even got released on DVD. There are a few episodes here on YouTube, but I do have to warn you, they are off of 30-plus-year-old videotapes, and the sound is a little rough. So if you are interested, I'd say give it a look at least. I'm going to give the pilot to AfterMASH a B. Still, though, that's not exactly where our MASH story ends, and we'll cover that next time. See you all then.
Hey guys, remember, you can help support my channel at patreon.com/SleepyTimeForCat Productions, where you can help request a movie, even if it's something like, say, Sonic the Hedgehog or the next Purge film. I'll review it.